Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of August 13th, 2012. Welcome to the site to all you new members and welcome back to the old. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one. But I need your question if I'm going to answer it, so please send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. It's the best way to get the most out of your subscription, and you can even send me your Maya files to open on screen. I love getting Maya files. So last week was SIGGRAPH week. My head is a little bit spinning. It's always very exciting to go, meet a lot of people, see a lot of cool things. And I will be writing a SIGGRAPH roundup article for all you members, and I think you'll find it pretty good. No replacement, of course, for going to SIGGRAPH yourself, but definitely worth a read, I hope. And I'll go into it a little bit more in the article I'm going to write. But just in general, I feel that SIGGRAPH has turned more into sort of like the mid-level studio and like pipeline conference. It's more about finding sort of better and cheaper ways for the prosumer and sort of mid-level studio to get business done. So you have like storage solutions, you have like the mid-level mocap, mid-level rapid prototyping. Obviously the prosumer tools like ZBrush is definitely priced to be a prosumer tool. Of course you have Autodesk and Intel and whatever. But at the same time, it really does feel like the focus of the conference is not really the user and the artist. It really feels like it's the person that needs to get business done, and to me that's like the mid-level studio for the kinds of stuff that they're showing off. So still a good show, still a lot of fun, and definitely the talks were amazing. I got to see a few talks, the ILM one, Sony one, really fun, really great. And obviously in there you get very inspired. I was also very inspired by the keynote. So I'll go into it a lot more in that article, but that's a little bit of a preview of what I'm going to talk about. In more conference news, I'm going to the Czech Republic. Hopefully you know about this by now, but what you might not realize is I'm going to be streaming as much as I can from the conference. As I can, I'm going to be also posting videos, dailies, just updates as much as I can from the Czech Republic here on KennyRoy.com. You'll see the Animalia web, the menu for the webcast go up on the menu on the right in the next probably week. You'll see that. You'll also see a lot of running up to the conference. You might see some ads for it as well. You should check it out if you haven't checked it out already. The ads are going to say animalia.eu. You can go there right now and just check into what they have going on there. It was named as one of the top 100 animation schools in the world, this little conference. So that's pretty incredible. And then after that, we have CTN. And CTN really is the SIGGRAPH for animators now. It really is the artistic gathering of animators. So that's always a huge amount of fun. That's November 16th, 17th, 18th. I don't know if I'm going to be doing anything in an official capacity, but by then we'll have some more little painter to look at, of course. And I don't know, maybe I can talk about it to the industry students and see you guys there. So keep me informed if you're going to be at CTN. I will certainly keep you informed. We'll go from there, okay? So let's get to the question. It's a good one. Check it out. Spine wobble. This is a really good question. So for me, I can kind of break this up into two different sections. Performance work and physical work. Okay. Now let's talk about the first one. In performance work, spine wobble can really be introduced when I hear your workflow on 4s and then on 2s. What it reminds me of is many students that I've had at Animation Mentor who have this feeling that when there's two keys really far apart, that there's just a need to like split the difference and just like start adding a sort of density of keys that will make their scene start working correctly. That might not even be the mindset that you have, but just as a workflow, like if you watch the 24-hour animation marathon replay, and I've been telling a lot of people, I've been referring a lot of people to that lately, a lot. And I know it's a lot to chew through. 24 hours, I get it. It's a lot to look at, okay? At the same time, though, 24 hours of video, the other edge of the sword is that's a ton of video. It's a ton of stuff to look at. And so you pretty much can watch me overcome the hurdles that bar you from moving to the next phase of your animation. You'll notice, though, if you watch it, that I never say, like, oh, I normally do this on 8s or 4s or whatever. I always try to find the best timing. I'll block in my poses, and then I'll retime it to, like, the feeling. Normally, it's like a sound effect. If I've done some video reference, then it'll be the sound of that video reference and the energy. And in my head and out loud sometimes, I'll just be like, and if that's like, you know, 1 frame of tiny little bit of anticipation, a 5-frame movement, like a 2 or 3 frame overshoot, and then like a 6-frame settle, I don't care. I'm not worried about going from 8s to 4s to 2s because that is the most even, no pun intended, way to get, you know, that kind of uniform density on my keys. Okay, so and I avoid that specifically because I find, even though I'm trying to actively resist this from happening, that I fall into that problem. So with performance work, what happens with the spine is that we have this like need to like pose it in a way that gets us, you know, kind of performing like at any moment. But the real trick is this. You should only add breakdowns and in-betweens on your spine when it adds resolution to your character arc and never anywhere else. All right? Before going into spline, okay? So this is what I mean. You have 2 points, and with 2 points in space, you can define a line, okay? With 3 points, that line can become a curve, but with only 3 points, that curve is very linear. Actually, it's by definition linear, right? So that's with 3 points. If you add 4 points, all right, all of a sudden you're getting something that resembles a little bit more of a curve. 5 points, okay? All of a sudden things are looking a lot more curved. And with 50 points, obviously you have a perfect curve. Okay, so you only add breakdowns and in-betweens with performance work, and they should be full body poses. Okay, head to toe posing, not just like a little bit of a tweak on the spine, right? You only add those in stepped mode before you spline when it adds resolution, when it adds finer detail to the character arc. Here's an example. If you're going from happy to sad, all right? Happy to sad, okay? If that's a linear, if you have 2 points, you're going to be literally like this. That's going to make no sense, right? So if you want to add an in-between right here, okay, what is it going to be? It should add an extra point of resolution to that moment, okay? So maybe you go from happy to surprised to sad. You see what I mean? So why does he go from happy to sad? Well, he's going to have this moment where he's really, really happy, and then he gets shocked, and then realizes what it is, and it makes him really sad, okay? So all of those moments that you have that define what the character goes through emotionally, those need breakdowns, okay? Then we start talking about physicality. So you can be performing and need a breakdown from the happy to sad, but also if the character is walking from A to B while all of this is happening, you need to consider the physical needs of your poses, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look here. Here is a rig. This is called Alfred. and he's a decent rig. I wouldn't say he's the most robust rig I've ever worked with ever, but he's okay. And I picked him because he basically has an FK spine, not spline. I told myself not to do that. Let's see here. Yeah, actually, he only has controls actually on, and you can't even change it. He only has rotation on 2 controls in the spine, and they're both FK. So this is all we need. And I would suggest. Looks like it's bending great. I would suggest this. You'll notice that looking at this character, that the top 2 spine controls do pretty much all the bending in the spine that you really need. And then the root also, it controls this lower spine control, and then you have the hips control right here. Okay, so here's the thing. When you look at the way that the hips move, and you want to have that independence so you can do some like hip movement and stuff like that, the hips are good to move within the root, but when you rotate the root on its own, you kind of want to ask yourself if it's rotating the spine, the lower spine and the hips in a different way than the lower spine and hips are rotating themselves. So when I move the root and then I move the hips alone, or the hips and the lower spine, let me see here. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, these 2 are moving right now. I move them in world. These 2 are moving right now in a way that they are not moving when it is the root control. So if I select the root and rotate the root, you see that they're actually translating those 2 bottom curves. Okay. So again, the hips, you want that kind of independent control in the hips, but when you move them both together, you see that it's actually not the exact same thing. So you can get some problems with counter animating when you do this. Okay, so I would just recommend use the hips, rotate them back and forth, do little dances and whatever, but kind of leave that lower spine control completely alone. When it's so close to the root control, you can pretty much use the root as that lower spine control. This upper one looks like rib cage pretty much. And let's see these shoulders. No, these shoulders don't really do anything. Okay. So, yeah, so like rib, cage, and then like basically torso, and then, these 3 joints make up your spine. So, what I want to show you is when you're doing physical work, I'm just going to key something really, really fast right now. So just ignore the arms and all that stuff. I'm just going to pose him really quickly. Just going to move him. He's like landing on the ground. Do like maybe 2 frames settle, maybe like 6 frames here, and then settle back down. And then I'm going to go back and do the rotation. Okay, so I'm going to basically overlap 2 frames on the rotation on the root, on all frames here. See 14 and then 16, 18. I'm just going to rotate. Okay, so basically we have a nice kind of super squishy, this is like Gumby landing on the ground. Okay, and then I'm going to go back through and I'm going to animate the spine kind of straight forward, and you'll see that the overlap in the spine as it kind of like comes out is going to be so like specific that you can never predict it, and that's kind of like the real point here. Okay, so it's like he lands, and then, I pretty much have to like find, where I want it to happen, where I want it to occur, and then it overlaps right here, a little bit more in the top controller, like right there, and then kind of starts participating in that settle a little bit. This top one is a lot more mobile than the bottom control, and then that little settle. Now what I can do is I can actually go through and add some offsets in here and make it just a little bit more separated and looking a little bit more overlappy, basically, and even more gooey. So let's slide this like 2 frames. Maybe the top one can be maybe 1 frame extra. See here. Oop. Okay, so look at that. Like, obviously not a landing for any like serious realistic character or anything, you know, you'd be doing on games or, you know, anything like that. But cartoony and, you know, gets the job done and worth our discussion. Okay, so here's kind of my point. Like, if we go to a frame, if we look at like in the center of the animation here, and we select all of his keys, and we see that, okay, like frame 13. There's no frame on frame 13, and look at the pose that the spine is in. And since there's no frame right here, we're looking, you know, let me make sure you can see this. Let me make it, no, not height, size. Here we go. Okay. So if you're looking at this, you're like, okay, no frame on 13. So if this were where we would want to add a breakdown, like how could you possibly guess on frame 13 that this is what the spine is supposed to look like? Could you ever, like, you know, going through the animation, find the moment that, you know, frame 13 actually exists in the spines, you know? So this is like a good example of when you're moving straight forward and you have to select each control and kind of like look at it and do your offsets. And as I'm looking up at these, I mean, the rotations are very arbitrary. Hold on, my precision's a little too high. My precision is high because I was doing some offsets, you know, by math. Let me turn it back down to 3. Okay. So yeah, but like 36.243 rotate X on this one, and then my middle spine is 6.653, and you might expect that the upper one would be even you know, closer to the middle one, but you know, it's not. So it's kind of like, look, frame 13, look at the spine, and then as the animation's going by, like, ask yourself, could you ever possibly really predict or make, you know, full body breakdowns on those kinds of keys? I propose that you really can't. So your workflow has to be a little bit more flexible than it sounds like it is for you, for this animator that sent in this question. The amount of keys, the kind of arbitrary density of your keys makes no difference if there is not a lot of resolution required for that character arc, or if you are doing really physical work where you need to kind of let go of the idea that your breakdowns are going to give you that basically that physical action that you're trying to achieve is going to be achieved by having these really detailed breakdowns that you can intuit from like looking at the animation. All right, so I key things pretty straightforward, in stepped, okay, still in stepped, but pretty straightforward, relying on things like building in overlap and overshoot and follow through and anticipation into my poses, and then when it gets to spline, letting that kind of work itself out a little bit. I mean, I refer you again to the 24-hour animation marathon replay. I know it's a lot of video to go through, but if you want to skip to, I think it was like section 3 or 4, when I was kind of getting a little bit close to the end of stepped keys, I think you'll see that right when I splined it, there were sections that obviously had a lot of problems, but as I moved forward in those sections, especially the very physical, like the step out, that the breakdowns absolutely did not work. And the breakdowns were more informational for me while I was starting my animation than they were actually things that I wanted to exist and survive to the end of the animation. And I believe that, especially like on that midway point before, as Pierre is stepping from left to right, I believe I selected those poses and basically deleted everything and just kind of in spline made it work a lot better for me, and let Maya do a little bit of the work for me as well in terms of like the overlap and offsetting keys. So yeah, I think you nail it on the head. I think the root of your problem is that you're doing you're on 4s and 2s and you're posing everything, but then you're adding extra movement, which might be overlap, which might need to be actually derived with a very physical action from that offset of your more spread apart keyframes. Because I can't imagine how much wobble there would be if you're all the way down on 2s and then you're grabbing just like single parts of the spine and making little adjustments. That must be a lot of wobble, okay? So this was a great question. Please send me your questions. If you haven't done it already, what are you waiting for? I mean, really, you can get a video just like this one answering your specific problem in character animation. How cool is that? So send your questions. Please send them to webmaster@kennyward.com. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I read all of them, okay? Thanks a lot. Look around the site for some really cool content coming up, including the Animalia webcast information and other fun stuff. So thanks a lot. Good luck with your animation. And as always, rock on.